She was 12 years old, and the house was already afraid of her. Not the staff, not the guards, the house itself. 17 maids had walked through that front door. 17 had left. The last one didn't say goodbye. The door slammed behind her, and Zara stood at the top of the stairs and listened to the silence that followed. Same expression, same stillness, almost like she was keeping score. Then Amara arrived. No fear in her eyes, no apology in her posture, no plan to leave. And something in that house shifted. For the first time, it wasn't her that was the problem. The mansion sat behind iron gates at the edge of the city. From the outside, it looked like order, like success, like a family that had everything under control. It was none of those things. Inside those walls lived a man whose name made people careful. He was Korean, quiet in the way powerful men are quiet, not because they have nothing to say, because they rarely need to say it twice. Outside those walls, he was untouchable. Doors opened before he reached them. Conversations stopped when he entered a room. Men who carried weapons became careful around him. He had never asked for that kind of respect. He had simply become the kind of man it followed. Inside his own home, he had no idea what was happening. He left before sunrise. He returned after dark. He believed his house was in order because no one had told him otherwise, and no one was going to. His wife had tried. In the beginning, she had really tried. She used to be formidable. You could still see it in the way she stood, in the way people used to listen when she spoke, in the stillness she carried when she walked into a room. But years of invisible battles had taken something from her. Not her love for her daughter, never that, but her certainty, her belief that she could still reach Zara. That belief was gone, because Zara didn't fight back. She didn't argue. She didn't slam doors or throw words like weapons. She simply looked at her mother with those flat, unreadable eyes and waited. She always waited, because she knew the moment always passed. It always passed, and it always would, until it didn't. The remaining staff moved like ghosts, careful, silent, eyes down. There was an unspoken rule in that house. Do your work, stay invisible, and do not give her a reason to look at you. Because when Zara looked at you, something always followed. 17 maids had learned that. 17 maids had left. Then the 18th arrived. Her name was Amara.
She came on a Wednesday morning. No small talk, no nervous energy. She shook the mother's hand, set her bag by the door, and looked around the house the way someone looks at a problem they've already decided to solve. She was a Black woman, calm in the bone. Not the kind of calm that comes from having an easy life, the kind that comes from choosing, every single day, not to be moved. The mother gave her the tour. Kitchen, laundry, schedule. They walked the whole house in near silence, and then they stopped, at the end of the hallway, in front of a closed door. The mother didn't say much. She didn't need to. The look on her face said everything. Amara looked at the door, looked back at the mother, and nodded once. Zara heard the footsteps stop outside her room. She didn't look up from her phone. She already knew what this was. Another one. Another woman who thought she was different. She wasn't worried. She never was. That was mistake number 1. Not Amara's mistake, Zara's. The first test came within the hour. Lunch was ready. The table was set. Zara didn't come down. That was always step 1. Make them come to you. Make them knock. Make them stand outside your door like they need permission to breathe. The previous maids always knocked twice, then a third time, voice shrinking with every attempt. Amara knocked once. No answer. She opened it. Not slowly, not cautiously, just opened it, like she had every right to. She walked in, set the tray on the desk. Zara didn't look up. Amara turned to leave. "You knock like you belong here." Zara's voice came from the corner. Flat, cold, precise. "You don't." Amara stopped. She turned around, looked at Zara the way you look at something that has surprised you, not frightened you, not offended you, surprised you. She held the look 3 seconds, long enough to be felt. "We'll see," Amara said. Soft, calm, dangerous. Then she walked out, closed the door behind her, quietly. Zara sat in the silence that followed and felt something she had never felt before. She didn't know what it was yet, but it was there, small, cold, sitting in her chest like a stone, like a crack in a wall she thought was solid. She picked up her fork, put it down, looked at the door, picked up her fork again. Downstairs, Amara moved through the kitchen without hurry. She had seen Zara's type before. Not often, but enough. A child who had learned early that people would move for her and had spent years confirming it. Every maid who flinched taught her something.
Every adult who retreated added another layer to the armor. Leaving wasn't kindness, leaving was confirmation. Every exit told Zara the same thing. You win. Again. Amara had not come here to confirm that. That evening, the father came home to a quiet house. Different quiet, not the tight, suffocating kind. Something else. His wife stood in the kitchen doorway. She watched Amara move through the dining room, setting the table, adjusting a glass, straightening a chair. She felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope. She wasn't ready to call it hope, but something close. Something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Dinner was served without incident. Zara sat at the table, ate in silence, didn't cause anything, but twice, just twice, her eyes moved to Amara's face, searching, looking for the crack, the flinch, the sign that this woman was just like the others. She found nothing, and that was the problem. Later that night, Zara lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. She ran through it again. The door opening without hesitation, the tray placed without apology, that look, those 2 words, "We'll see." She had delivered her sharpest line, the one that always worked, and it had landed like a stone dropped into deep water. Gone, like it meant nothing, like she meant nothing. Zara was not used to meaning nothing. She turned onto her side, told herself it didn't matter, but it did. She just didn't know why yet. And somewhere in the house, Amara sat in her small room, eyes open, not worried, not planning, just present, ready, because she knew something Zara didn't. The real battle hadn't started yet. If this story already has you locked in, you are not alone. Drop a comment right now. Who do you think breaks first? Zara, the girl who has never lost, or Amara, the woman who refuses to leave? Tell me. I want to know what you think. And if you're still watching, subscribe. Turn on notifications, because this is where the real damage begins. And trust me, you are not ready for what happens next. She woke up the next morning expecting it to feel normal. It didn't. She lay in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, running through it again. We'll see. 2 words, that was all. And yet they had sat in her chest all night like something unfinished. Zara didn't do unfinished. She got up. The house was already moving when she came downstairs. Amara was in the kitchen, back street, movements clean, no wasted motion. She didn't look up when Zara entered, didn't acknowledge her, didn't pause, just continued.
Like Zara's presence was noted, and nothing more. That was new. Every maid before had reacted to her entrance. Some with nerves, some with forced smiles, some with that careful, practiced invisibility that was its own kind of reaction. Amara did none of those things. She simply moved through the kitchen like she had been doing it for years, like this was already her space. Zara stood in the doorway and felt something she rarely felt, uncertain. She didn't like it. She decided to test it differently that morning. The previous tactics had been cold, distant. This time she would be direct. She sat at the kitchen island and watched Amara work. Said nothing for a long moment. Then, "How many houses have you worked in?" Amara didn't stop moving. "Enough," she said. "And they all kept you?" A pause. Small, barely noticeable. "The ones worth keeping me, yes." Zara let that sit for a second. Then she smiled. Not warmly, the kind of smile that meant something else entirely. "Nobody here has ever kept a maid longer than 2 weeks." Amara set a glass down on the counter, turned around, looked at Zara with that same calm that had no bottom to it. "Then I guess I'm not like the others." She turned back, continued working, like the conversation was already over. Zara's smile faded. The house felt it. Not fear, something else. Watching. Zara felt their eyes when she passed. She didn't like that either. She was used to people watching her out of fear. This felt different. This felt like curiosity, like they were no longer sure how the story ended. Neither was she. And that was the most unsettling thing of all. She found her moment that evening. The father was home early. Rare. He sat in the study with the door half open. The mother was upstairs. The house was quiet in the way it got when everyone was present, but separate. Zara walked into the dining room where Amara was setting the table. She stood and watched her for a moment. Then she said it. The thing she kept for last resorts. The line she had never needed to use twice. She said it quietly, precisely. The way she said everything. She talked about Amara's place in this house. What she was, what she would never be. Words designed to reduce, to remind, to put someone back in a box they could not climb out of. She had used this on the 15th maid. The woman had set down her cloth and walked out without a word. She had used it on the 16th. That one had lasted 30 more minutes before her hands started shaking. This was her sharpest weapon, and she aimed it carefully. The silence that followed was long. Amara had stopped moving, her back still to Zara.
Both hands resting on the edge of the table, Zara waited. For the flinch, for the shift in posture, for the moment it always came. That crack, that fracture, that small collapse that told her she had won. It didn't come. Amara stood still for 3 full seconds. Then she straightened, turned around slowly, and looked at Zara. Not with anger, not with hurt, with something far more difficult to face. Clarity. Like she had seen this moment coming from the very first day. Like she had already decided what she would do when it arrived. She didn't raise her voice, didn't argue, didn't reach for the door. She took 1 step closer, just one, and she spoke, low, even, unmovable. Say what you need to say. A pause. I'm still going to be here tomorrow. The room went completely silent. Zara stared at her, waiting for more. There was no more. Amara held her gaze, steady, patient, like she had all the time in the world. And Zara, for the first time in her life, looked away first. It lasted less than a second, but they both felt it. Amara went back to setting the table, quiet, unhurried,
like nothing had happened. But something had, something that could not be undone. Zara stood in the middle of that dining room and felt the walls of something she had spent years building begin to tremble. Not collapse, not yet, just tremble. She turned and walked out. No words, no expression, same as always, except her hands, just slightly, were not steady. That night the house was different again. The father sat at the head of the table and noticed the quiet. Not the old quiet, something new. He looked at his wife. She looked back. Neither spoke, but they both felt it. Somewhere between what this house had been and what it might become, something was moving. Slowly, almost invisibly, but moving. Upstairs, Zara sat on the edge of her bed. She wasn't staring at the ceiling this time. She was looking at her hands, thinking about that 1 second. That one small second when her eyes had moved first. She told herself it meant nothing. She told herself Amara had gotten lucky. She told herself tomorrow would be different. But somewhere underneath all of that, in a place she had never had to visit before, she knew something had changed. She just wasn't ready to call it what it was. And down the hall, Amara sat in her small room, same as the night before. Eyes open, still.
But this time, something was different in her expression. Not satisfaction, not victory. Something quieter than that. She had planted something today. She didn't know yet if it would grow. She never did. That was the hardest part of this kind of work. You could hold your ground. You could refuse to move. You could stand in the fire and not flinch. But you could not make someone choose to change. That part was never yours to control. She closed her eyes and waited for tomorrow. You just watched Zara look away first. And if you understand what that means, you already know this isn't over. So tell me, does Zara come back stronger or does she break? Comment it. I'm reading everything. And if this story is living in your head right now, subscribe. Turn on notifications because this isn't over, not even close. And the next part is where we find out what Zara is really made of. She came down harder the next morning. That was always what happened when something didn't work. You didn't retreat, you escalated. Zara had learned that early. If the first move doesn't land, go deeper, find the edge, push past it. She had mapped the edges of every person in that house. She knew exactly how far each one could go before they broke. She had not yet found Amara's edge. That needed to change. It started at breakfast, small, calculated, the way Zara always started. She knocked the glass off the counter, didn't look at it, didn't apologize, just watched to see what Amara would do. Amara cleaned it up. No reaction, no comment, like picking up broken glass was simply part of the morning. Zara pushed further. She left her room deliberately destroyed, clothes on the floor, bed unmade, drawers pulled open, a quiet declaration, clean this, serve me, know your place. Amara cleaned it, folded everything, closed every drawer, moved through the room like it was any other task on any other day. Zara watched from the doorway and felt the frustration building in her chest like pressure behind glass. By midday, the father noticed. He was home again, unusual for a second consecutive day. He stood in the hallway and watched Zara move through the house. Something in his expression shifted. Not anger, not yet. Recognition, like a man who had been away for a long time and had just realized how much he had missed. He said nothing. But his eyes followed Zara in a way they hadn't before. Careful. Studying. Zara felt it and didn't like it. She was used to being invisible to him. That invisibility had always been useful. Now it was gone. That afternoon, the mother sat at the kitchen table and watched Amara prepare dinner. She wrapped both hands around her cup, looked at Amara's back, and for the first time in years, felt the shape of what this house could have been.
what it still might be. She didn't say it out loud. Some things are too fragile for words. Zara's final move came just before dinner. She had been planning it all day. This one was different. Not cold, not distant, personal. She found Amara alone in the dining room, and this time she didn't use words like weapons. She used them like a door closing. Final, absolute. She told Amara exactly what she thought of her. Not her work, her, who she was, where she came from, what she would always be in this house. Every word delivered with precision. Saved, rehearsed, aimed. She finished, stood back, and waited. For the flinch, for the argument, for the tears, for anything. Amara was still, back straight, hands at her sides. The silence stretched. 5 seconds, 10. Then Amara turned around and looked at her. In her eyes, there was nothing Zara could use. No hurt, no anger, no fear. Just that same bottomless calm, like she had already processed everything and had decided it didn't change a single thing. She looked at Zara for a long moment, then turned back to the table and continued setting it, like Zara wasn't there, like the words had fallen on ground that simply would not receive them. Zara stood in the doorway. For the first time, she had nothing left to throw. She turned and walked upstairs, hands not steady, chest tight, something pressing behind her eyes she refused to name. The house was quiet that night, heavier, like the air before a storm that never quite arrives. The father sat in his study long after dinner. The mother stayed in the kitchen, both feeling something they could not yet name, but real. The next morning, Amara's door was open.
Zara noticed it from the hallway. She stopped, looked in. The bed was made perfectly, corners tight, pillows straight, like no one had ever slept there. The bag was packed, sitting by the door. Something moved through Zara's chest, fast, unexpected. She pushed it down. Amara came down the stairs at 7, bag in hand, back straight, same energy as the first morning she arrived. She shook the mother's hand, firm, unhurried. The mother held it a moment longer than necessary. The father stood in the hallway. He looked at Amara with the kind of look powerful men rarely give anyone, respect. She nodded at him. Then she turned and walked toward the front door. Zara was standing at the bottom of the stairs. She didn't plan to be there. She just was. Amara walked past her, didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't look for a reaction, didn't look for anything. She reached the front door, opened it, stepped through, and closed it behind her, quietly, the same way she closed every door in this house. No drama, no announcement, just gone. The house held its breath. Zara stood at the bottom of the stairs and felt something she had no word for. Not anger, not relief, something she had spent her whole life making other people feel and had never once felt herself. She didn't say goodbye, and for the first time, Zara didn't know what that meant. She stood there long after the sound faded, long after the house went quiet, long after there was anything left to stand there for. Some people leave loudly. You hear them go, but the ones who leave quietly, you feel them for years. Zara won't change today, maybe not tomorrow, but something moved. And some things, once they move, never go back. If you made it to the end of this story, you already know this wasn't just about a maid and a little girl. This was about every person who ever stood their ground quietly in a room that didn't want them there. So tell me, right now, in the comments, who did this story remind you of?
Amara or Zara? Because we have all been both at some point. Comment it. I am reading everything. And if this story moved something in you, subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because the next story is already coming, and it hits even harder than this one.